So you want to paint your characters with layer modes. That is cheating, you know? Shame on you, shame. But don't worry, I'm gonna help you. What's up guys, Lucas here and welcome to another video. Today I'm gonna show you how you can take a character that looks like this and take it to this with just simple 4 layers, 4 layer modes, and you're gonna be done. So let's go and get started. Alright, so painting with layers, there are very few things that I love more about digital painting than painting with layers. Layers are just one of those magical things that make my life so much easier. For this tutorial I'm gonna be using Photoshop, but you are free to follow along with whatever software you prefer. As I told you before, we are going to add light or shade this character with only 4 steps. But before we start adding those steps, we need a character to add lights to. So we make a line art, we add masks, we add some shading, and then we colorize, and we are ready. Okay, let's rewind a second so that I can tell you what did I do on each step. So the line art is done on a single layer. That means that I am not trying to go over it again and again with different layers, trying to clean it more and more. This does save me quite a bit of time during the process, but it also increases the difficulty. So this is not for everyone, only if you feel like you are drawing something that you are very comfortable with. Because I know that this drawing is going to be completely painted, that means that I'm not gonna be showing the line art in the final painting. I can be a bit more rough and not worry about things like line weight or line quality. With the line art ready, it is time for us to move to step number 2, the masking. This step is pretty simple. If you made a clean enough line art, you can come in with a magic wand, select the space outside your drawing, invert the selection, and fill the silhouette of your character with a flat color. What I like to do then is lower the opacity of the line art, and I start creating masks for each element inside my painting. Now this is a very simple painting, it's just a portrait, so there aren't a lot of elements for me to paint, but I still want to separate some of them because it's gonna make my life much easier when it comes to put some values in this drawing. Which is exactly what we're gonna do right now with step number 3. Shading. Okay, I hope that you're ready, because if you have been breezing through the process up until now, then shading is where it's at. Shading is a whole other level of difficulty. But don't worry, we're gonna talk about it in here step by step, and you're gonna see that it is not as challenging as it looks like at the start. And if you're still having problems after watching this tutorial, then this is a good moment to tell you that this video is part of a gigantic list of tutorials, 100+ tutorials that I have on my art school, digitalpaintingmaster.com, where we cover in-depth topics like construction, values, character painting, color painting. So if you're tired of trying to become an artist all by yourself watching YouTube videos, go to digitalpaintingmaster.com and take advantage of the gigantic discount that we have right now for a limited time only. Okay, with the plug out of the way, let's talk about those values. The key to painting good values is to paint from general to specific. What does that mean? Well, it means that when you see a subject like this one, instead of thinking that you're painting a portrait, you know, hair and skin and shirt, etc., you think about painting simple shapes. That is gonna give you some pretty good values very fast. They're going to be rough, but it's going to be enough for a lot of artists out there. If you want to take your values further, then the next step is for you to think about planes, as in which planes of the face are looking towards the light and which ones look away from it. Now, if you're following along with this tutorial, make sure that you don't use a very directional light, because that is the light that we're gonna be adding next. Instead, try to light these characters as if they would be standing outside on a very cloudy day. This is called diffuse light, and it is much easier to paint than other types of light out there, and it is an excellent base for us to add the light next. But before we go and do that, we have one final little step, and that is to colorize this black and white painting. Now, I already talked about how to do this on another video, this one that is popping on your screen right now, but if you want to know how I did it here, I used mostly color layers clipped to the black and white masks. Some layers, like the skin, required a couple of adjustments, so I added a brightness and contrast layer here in Photoshop, and also a gradient map to make the shadows a bit warmer. But finally, we are ready to start adding some light to this character. You can do this without having to paint all the values that we painted before, but the results are not going to be nearly as good. So I recommend that you follow the workflow step by step. The first layer that we're gonna add to illuminate this character is the key light. There are a couple of ways for you to do this. You can either add the shadow in, or you can paint the light in. when. It really depends if your character is very dark or is very light. In this case, our character is very light, so we are gonna be painting the shadow in. How to do this is super simple. I'm gonna create a new layer on top of everything and I'm gonna set this into multiply mode. Because the environment of my character is purplish, bluish, I am choosing that same color to paint the shadows. Something that is super important in this stage is for you to keep the direction of the light consistent. What I like to do to make it simple for me is that I like to draw the direction of the light right there on the canvas so that I don't forget. If you're having some trouble imagining where the light is coming from and which parts of the subject it would hit, remember to think about first simple figures and then about the planes of the face. Now, the beauty of this workflow is that you don't have to go with the first light that you draw. I would like for you to think about it more like you have a 3D model in front of you and now you can decide whatever way you want to light it. I didn't like very much this first key light, so I decided to make another one. The process is the same. I am keeping the shapes very rough at the start and then slowly thinking about the planes and refining them. I am using my LP hairy brush in case that you want to know, because this is my favorite brush for this stage of the process. Okay, so we got ourselves a key light. Now, this is an optional part of the process, but something that makes characters look really cool is to have a secondary light, also called sometimes a bounce light or a kick light. Usually you like to have that light in the shadow side of the character, and it is great to lift the character out of the background and make it pop. So let's add one. This one is going to be much easier for you to add to your character than the key light, but the trick to it is to imagine it also as a real light. It doesn't matter that usually it hits only the edge of the character. I want you to imagine it as three-dimensional as possible so that your light still looks real. For the layer mode of this one, you can experiment with whatever works best with your character. I started painting mine in lighten mode, but I ended up using one of my favorites for this one, which is linear light. If for some reason your software doesn't have linear light, then hard light is also very recommended. And another awesome thing about this workflow that I love is that you can change very quickly the color of any of your lights. So here I decided to go with a purple light because apparently I have a thing for purple, and once I went with that bounce light I said what the hell, and I made the whole background very purple. Alright, so ready for our third layer. This one is going to be super easy. It's going to be an overlaid layer, and with this one we are going to change and control the temperature and color of our key light. And since my shadows were cold, I decided that my key light was going to be warm. So all it takes is a big gradient of yellow from the top of the character down, and that is going to make our character look much more vibrant and alive. Okay, I think that everyone can agree that our character is looking pretty awesome compared with where we started, but we are not finished and we have one more layer to add that is gonna just make everything look so much more juicy. You guessed it? It's the highlights, of course, everyone loves highlights. For that, we're gonna make another layer on top of everything, and this one we're gonna set to screen mode. Remember that the highlights are nothing else than a reflection of the key light, so you're gonna be using also a warm color to paint these ones. A lot of artists make the mistake of putting an excess of highlights, so what I like to do is first I put a brush of the highlight with my LP hairy brush and then I erase it out. This allows me to kinda sculpt the shape of the highlight and make sure that it is exactly where I want it to be. And talking about that, if you're struggling to know where to put those highlights, remember that highlights are usually located along corners or where shapes bend. And another nice thing is that we can use this same layer to paint the highlights of the whole painting. In my case it is the skin and the hair, but remember that having some material variety in your characters is going to make them really stand out. Pretty awesome, right? 4 layers only and the character looks completely different. So you can feel free to leave your character like this if it works for you, but sometimes I like to push my characters just a bit more, and this is what I did with this one. So here is the character after I did overpaints, and here is again after I did what I call the post-production. If you want to learn how to do things like this with your characters, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future videos. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. As I told you, this is just one video out of the 100+ that we have in digitalpaintingmaster.com. So if you want to go accelerate your journey and learn directly from me, then go to digitalpaintingmaster.com and sign up for one of the courses. This was Lucas for Digital Painting Master, and I'll see you guys on the next one.